Okay, now we got Eugene. Eugene was a big character when he first came into the scene. He said that he knew how the apocalypse happened, and he knew how to cure it, and that he's a genius, and it really turned out that he's just a coward and was using his intelligence to manipulate people into believing that he was important so that he could get Eugene, or not, so he could get Abraham and Rosita to follow him and protect him. And I think that's very interesting survival tactic that not any other characters really embodied that I can think of. And he had a great transformation over time, going from coward to a guy with a plan and a mission and ideas. He's ultimately the guy that led to the discovering the Commonwealth by messing with radios, and he got the train system up and running again. So he's a very important character, figured out how to make bullets. He's extremely essential to everybody's survival, and he's one of my favorite characters, honestly. So we're going to throw him up in the S tier. Now, I do think they did a great job adapting him on the show. They made his dialogue much more idiosyncratic, which I really like. It's very easy. If you read a line, you know it's a Eugene line. So, in a way, they improved him on the show. But they also, I think, made him a bit too much of a coward on the show. They gave him a lot of opportunities to rise above that, but in the show, he feels a lot more pathetic by the end, whereas in the comic, he seems more respectable. He actually ends up getting together with Rosita, and that didn't end up working out, but he ended up not wallowing in self-pity. He kept moving forward, and eventually ended up with Stephanie in the Commonwealth. So, yeah, in a way, he's better on the show in terms of dialogue and the idiosyncratic nature of how he talks. But in the comic, I think that he had some better aspects to his character and a great transformation over time, and the way his look transformed as well. He was substantially different visually at the end than he was at the beginning, which so far hasn't really happened on the show in the same way. So, yeah, we're going to put him in the S tier. Okay, here we got Father Gabriel. Now, he was an interesting character when he was first introduced. His backstory of being locking himself in the church and not letting his parishioners in. This is a coward, a very cowardly man. But he transformed, and at the end, he ends up sacrificing himself, putting himself on the line, being pretty much the only major casualty in the Whisperer War of the named characters. And it was great to see him have that moment at the end. However, most of his time in the comic, after he's introduced, he's just kind of there. He hosts some events and stuff, and he has a presence that it adds to the colony and makes it feel more like a real settlement, you know. So having a church there was definitely good for Alexandria, but you know, I feel like most of the time he just kind of milled about, whereas in the show he's more of a leader. Now, I do think they went a bit too far in the show in terms of like him going against his faith and stuff, whereas he didn't do that in the comic, which I appreciate. So we're gonna put him in the C tier. I think that's a good place for him. Now we got the governor. This guy is a complete piece of crap. Everyone hates the governor. And with good reason. He is an insane person. Literally insane. If you read the excellent Rise of the Governor novel, which if you're a fan of the comic and you have not read that yet, you are seriously missing out. Go out and buy that today. It is one of the best pieces of Walking Dead, you know, the whole franchise. It's an incredible book. Goes into a lot more depth about how he came to be. I don't even really want to spoil it if you haven't read it yet, but when you read that in full context, you understand who he actually is, that he's actually convincing himself he's somebody else. I'm not going to spoil too much, but he's a great character, and he's just an evil piece of crap. If you only read the comic, there isn't really that much depth there, but that I think is okay. It still works. I mean, he chopped off Rick's hand and stuff, and wow, he's just made a very memorable entrance. That is for sure. Now he's, like I said, once you read that novel, there's so much more depth to his character and how he not died, but how Michonne came back and tortured him. We'll get more into that when we talk about Michonne, but at first you're like, yeah, go Michonne, and then she just takes it way too far, and you're like, oh God, Michonne, what are you doing? Just kill him already and be done with it. And then she just keeps going, and he doesn't die, and then he comes back mounted on a tank, blows through the fences at the prison, and just messes up everybody's day. So this is one of the key characters in the franchise, one of the most memorable villains in the whole story. Probably the standout villain. You know, he might be tied with Negan at the end of the day, but yeah, he's a total piece of garbage. So yeah, you'll love to hate him. So we'll put him in the A tier. Now Heath here is a character that stuck around for a long time, and he has a great look to him. His hair, the glasses, everything is very memorable look. However, I just felt like he just, you know, he was a key player in the story. You know, he fought back against Negan when Rick was kind of wanted to make it look like he was, you know, defeated by Negan. So it was good to see him as kind of an audience surrogate fighting back in that moment. But by and large, he just kind of was there. I mean, he didn't really have an arc. He didn't really change much. So he's a cool character that I enjoyed seeing. You know, I always, you know, like to see his design and stuff, but I feel like he was underutilized, if I had to be perfectly honest. So we're going to throw him in the D tier because he is a good character with a lot of potential, but it wasn't really capitalized on as much as it could have been. So we'll throw him in the D tier. Okay, and now we got Hershel number 2. We should probably have done Hershel number 1 first, but this is Maggie's son, who plays a big role in the final issue. Now, he's a character that you are made to dislike. He's an interesting character at the end. However, I'm going to lower him a few tiers because I feel like naming him Hershel, he should have just been named Glenn. As the father was dead at the time, he should have been Glenn Jr., absolutely. Especially because Hershel in the show was very much a positive character that we love, right? In the comic, it's a bit more complicated. He's a much more troubled man, and he's not necessarily somebody that you like all the time. So naming him Hershel, it wasn't as good a fit to me. It makes a little bit more sense in the show, but even in the show, I feel like it should be Glenn Jr. So, you know, honestly, he's a interesting character at the end. I mean, you wouldn't be able to have that last issue plot line without him, because he's got like a carnival show of zombies wandering around. So, yeah. We'll throw him in the C tier, I think. Now we got Hershel number 1. It's Papa Hershel. Now this is an interesting character because of how he kicked out Rick and the group out of the house, out of the farm, after it was discovered that he was keeping walkers in the barn. Now he's an interesting character, but not somebody that you necessarily like all the time. Like I said, he's not the source of moral wisdom that he was in the show. They kind of, in the show, combined his character with Dale in a way. Dale is kind of that wise character that you look to for guidance, whereas, you know, after he died, they're in the show, they kind of rolled that into Hershel. So I'm going to put him in the C tier because, yeah, he's an important player, and he does end up coming around and being a positive influence, but, you know, it is what it is. Now, we're really just jumping around all over the place. Now we got Mercer here from the Commonwealth. Now, he's a character with a great look, and he's a fearsome guy. I think that the Commonwealth arc wouldn't really have worked without him. And just because of how I like the design so much, I think I'm going to throw him in the B tier. Now, of course, he ends up hooking up with Princess later. But other than that, you know, we don't know too much about him. But, you know, he's still an interesting character. So we're going to throw him in the B tier because I like the way he looks. Okay, now we got... Who are we going to do next? We got Donna. This is Alan's wife, who ends up dying. She's a cool character, but, you know, we didn't see too much of her. So, I don't know, we'll probably throw her in the C tier as well. And we're going to move on. So this guy, another love to hate, this piece of garbage convinced Tyrese's daughter to commit a suicide pact, which eventually led to the group discovering that they are all infected, because after Tyrese goes absolutely ballistic and murders this guy, he comes back to life, and, you know, the rest is history. So we don't like him. We don't like him. I'm going to throw him in E tier because I don't like this guy. I don't like him at all. No, I don't. Okay. But he's a good character. I mean, that moment is one of the most standout moments in the entire series, man. It's a shame it wasn't really adapted like that in the show, because the way that they discovered that in such a high stakes emotional moment was really missing. It's just not as cool to have a doctor at the CDC whisper it in Rick's ear as just seeing that happen. So, you know, and this is Tyrese's daughter, who I feel is a victim of this guy. We're going to throw her in the C tier because I feel bad for her. And now we got Thomas. This is the serial killer that was in the prison, and he's a very memorable villain. And that whole section was just crazy, man. When he was decapitating people, man, left and right, it was just insane. Nobody saw that coming. We're going to throw him in the B tier because when I got to that portion of the paperbacks when I was catching up on the comic, I've never read anything so fast in my life. So just an incredible character, and it's a shame that he wasn't really adapted in the show. Another missed opportunity in season 3, which I had many disappointments with. Maybe we'll do that someday when we do a Walking Dead seasons ranked. We should do that. Maybe I'll record that next. But yeah, so moving on to my favorite character in the whole comic series, ya boy, Jesus, Paul Monroe, the man. He's the coolest guy. He's very cool. Kung Fu master. Just a wise guy, you know, in the best way possible. And who can ever forget him catching a grenade in mid-air and throwing it right back at them? So he's just a character with a great look, and he transforms over time. Eventually he's got the man bun thing going on, and he's a big leadership role in the community. So he's just one of my favorite characters. We're going to put him in the S tier. I feel like the show didn't do him justice. Although I like the actor they got for him, and they had some great moments, but they just did not capitalize him nearly as much as the comic did. So they did a great job with that character.